Thank you for coming, everybody. So generally the format that we have here is that I ask a bunch of inane questions. Hopefully some of them will make sense. And we'll have a chat, and then during the evening we'll give you guys a chance to answer as many questions as we can, okay? So what we're going to do tonight with Jimmy is hopefully we're going to do it slightly differently. I think Jimmy's story from visit to Australia through to Selfridges, no barcode, has probably been told once or twice in Bournemouth. So we thought we'd focus on maybe the last couple of years and talk about some of the challenges that Jimmy's had as he's tried to scale the business. So to start, if it's okay, could you give us a feel for the size of the business as it is now? Mm-hmm. So how many cartons of coffee you're shipping in how many stores? If you could just give us a feel for that now, that would be excellent. Thank you.
Hello everyone. Nice to meet you all. Thanks very much for coming. So we're now a team of, there's 22 of us, which is pretty nuts when you come up the stairs each day and see desks filled with people doing actual work. And then, so that's kind of like the size of the company, and then we're probably going to be selling we'll do about 6 million cartons this year. That'll be up to the end of March, that's our kind of financial year, which works out at something like we've done some maths, it's something like 1 every 5 seconds, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, which is crazy considering you never really, you think of that as like, that's what happens with Kit Kats, but not with Jimmy's, but that's kind of happened, which is amazing. And then that's, in terms of like a turnover value, that's going to be about maybe 5.5 million quid that we'll do by the end of our financial year again in March. Retailers, we're still in the same, we've actually just gained a couple of new fun listings, which is Boots and M&S. So they've been amazing, really, really cool partners to work with. And then that's now given us a little bit of time to start focusing on a bit of international. So working with the likes of Dubai and Sweden and Ireland. So that's kind of us in a nutshell for now.
And so just to remind people if they're not there, what year did you start?
We started in 2011. So April 7, 2011 was the first ever day that we sold our first ever carton.
Excellent, okay. So I don't want to go right back to the beginning, but Could you give us a feel for when was the first point that you suddenly thought, oh, you can hear that as well, is that?
So that's just my music just playing randomly. I'm really sorry about that.
Bit of background, that's good.
Yeah.
So I always think in my experience as a staff fan, there's always there's an inflection point where you suddenly think, actually, we might be onto something here.
Yeah.
Can you remember when that was in your history?
This sounds a bit cheesy, but it happened from day one, which is knowing that it's just going to work.
Yeah.
Because if you think it's not going to work, then you're spending time thinking about it not working. I think getting Tesco's was a big thing for us.
And how soon was that in?
That was in like year 2, I think.
Okay.
And typically with someone like a big supermarket, they'll do a trial for you in a handful of stores, maybe 50 stores or 100 stores, depending on the size of their entire estate. But luckily for us, the guy who worked with us is this dude called David Beardmore. He was one of their big kind of category buyers. He was like, let's just put you in 3,000. I'm like, okay, shit, that's pretty helpful because that helps with all of our stock, puts money in the bank straight away and all these other amazing things. And then we've kind of scaled back from 3,000 down to a much more reasonable level because Jimmy's isn't going to be sold well in 3,000 stores. It might sell really well in 1,500 sites because some stores just aren't the right fit for us, but some are turbo good for us. So I think getting that for us was kind of like, okay, this is a big account for us. We need to step up to the plate and actually be as serious as we possibly can.
And I'll come back to that Tesco thing in a minute because that's really interesting. A couple of things in there. Actually, let's do it now. So you mentioned that you sort of go turbo in other stores and then other stores don't quite work.
Yeah.
How much of that decision are you involved in? Did it start out being a Tesco decision and then you're involved, or have you always been involved in those decisions about where you stock?
With the Tesco thing, because they just blanketed us and just put us in these 3,000 stores just to say, let's just see how you get on. That's not the traditional way of doing it, but the traditional way of doing it is to basically, when you go and meet your buyer, you'll sit down with them and you'll say, right, this is our brand, this is where we see it fitting, this is our kind of price point, and immediately they'll get a vibe of, okay, well this is either like a low demographic kind of product where it's got a cheaper price point. and maybe they don't spend a massive amount of marketing because it's a cheaper product. And then you go up to the other end where you've got really expensive products that rely on a lot of big marketing push. They've got really expensive ingredients, and they could have organic, or there might be some kind of, essentially like expensive ingredients, which is then only going to be found in stores where you're going to have that demographic who are looking for those products and happy to spend a lot of money on a single purchase of that product.
Yeah. And so when was the Tesco, when did you start going into Tesco? What year was that? How far were you in on the journey there?
I think it was 2013.
Okay, so a couple of years in.
Yeah.
Okay. And then after that, who did you go into after Tesco's? What was the journey? Who was the next big national after that?
It sounds terrible, I can't actually remember, but it started with the likes of Selfridges and Whole Foods, and working with a wholesaler who put us into the kind of places where you get people who essentially are on Instagram, who are they're walking around a shop going, holy crap, I really want to photograph that bag of crisps because it looks amazing. That's actually really useful for a brand like ours because people are telling you about it, and getting into places like Whole Foods and Selfridges, you're going to get that kind of rapport, and it's a good place to start because it's kind of up there. And then you filter down from there into all the other stores. So for us, the next best stop after Whole Foods was the likes of Waitrose. And then it was just a case of bringing any Tom, Dick and Harry who was willing to take the product on, but in stores where you see them fit. And Tesco was the only one where they just said, let's just go in all of the stores and make it work.
So is that done by you or somebody just picking up the phone and going, I need to find a Waitrose store manager and saying, who do I speak to stock my coffee?
Yeah, there are 1,001 ways in which you can get in touch with a buyer. One of them is the easiest way is to basically stalk them on LinkedIn, or to pretend to be someone calling up their head office saying, "Hi, I need to speak to your milk buyer." And they're like, "Do you know the name?" It's like, "Oh, no, I think I've forgotten my memory." And they're like, "Oh, it's Paul Crawford." And you're like, haha, paul.crawford@waitrose.co.uk, and then you send him an email. But typically now, it seems like when we started, we were part of a wave of loads of new food and drink startups. So these buyers are now putting walls up higher and higher and higher for these people to jump in and go, I've got an idea. And I mentor a few brands and stuff, and a couple of brands have said, oh, Jim, I feel really deflated because I've emailed the Sainsbury's buyer and they haven't got back to me. And you're like, well, of course they haven't got back to you, because you're one of 300 people every single week, fresh, out of the box, wanting to fight for shelf space. So you've got to do a little bit more than just send an email or put a phone call in. Your best bet is to really kind of wow them as best as you can. I remember we copied one guy, which is Charlie Bigham's. Do you know Charlie Bigham's, the food like things you can heat up? Such insane food. So this guy, apparently, he heated up hundreds of these meals and took them to Sainsbury's head office and stood outside and basically just gave all of the employees a hot thing to, or maybe he hadn't even heated it up. He just gave them to them and said, look, have this for dinner tonight. And one of the people he handed it out to was the buyer, and the buyer was like, holy crap, this is amazing. Called him in, right, let's get you listed. And we tried to do the same thing, but we didn't get lucky with that. But it just goes to show you've got to be inventive to wow these people into going, you know what, I actually will give you 5 minutes because you're actually making an effort to engage with me and make some difference.
And how does that tie back into the point that you made right at the start, which comes back to, from day one you believed it would work? I mean, for me, one of the things I notice is that one of the biggest differentiating factors between people who become successful and those that don't are the people that do really believe it. And it's almost like no barrier gets in their way. Mm-hmm. And do you think that you had that perseverance just to keep going? So you gave out your coffee, it wasn't successful, you did something else. Is it just a matter of keep going?
Yeah, you have to keep going. And we've experienced as many no's as anyone else is going to experience, but you just have to know that that's just part of the cycle. You can't expect everything to be a yes, because life doesn't work like that. But I think there's just this kind of there's reality, which is the business is either going to work or it's not. But then you need the dreamland, which is essentially me saying, I'm going to try and take it down it's going to work path. And all I can think of is it's going to work. Otherwise, it's going to go down the other path, and I don't want it to go down that path. Yeah. So, it might end up failing. Touch wood, it won't. There's not much wood around. Yes. It won't, because we've got this eternal belief that it will. And I think that comes down to if it did fail, what are you going to do? And I don't want to do what I did before. So that's why I work harder to make sure that it does work. and you've also got to just be I think you have to be a little bit crazy. And you've got to be, there's just that sprinkling of madness, because not many people go beyond a 8 till 5 work day. That's their kind of comfort zone. When you're driving to Shepton Mallet at 2 o'clock in the morning to pick up stock, to then drive into central London to do a delivery of 12 cases, to then come home to Christchurch at 10 o'clock in the morning and then do a full day's work, and then do an evening's work, and then get up and do the same thing again for 6 months straight, and you've suddenly gone grey in a heartbeat, and you're kind of like, okay, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I'm believing in it, and it's that kind of thing you've got to be a little bit crazy for.
Yeah, absolutely. And so after Tesco, did your sales process into the supermarkets change? Did it become easier with the others, or was it just the same sort of challenge?
It does feel like it gets easier, because you can ring up a retailer and say, oh hi, we've got listings in X, Y, and Z so far, and you're our missing link. And they go, oh, okay, how's your rate of sale performing? How long have you been with this account? What stores are you in? So you've got a bit of a track record. So it's almost like having a CV essentially. It's a shame when people come asking for a job, and if you haven't got any experience, you can't give them the job. But how are they going to get experience if they're not given a job in the first place? And we had that kind of tone of voice when we first started. So we haven't sold anywhere yet, because guess what? We've just started, and we need that opportunity. So can you give us that opportunity? Which we did, but I can't remember where I'm kind of going with this.
Did the sale change?
No, it doesn't. It's still exactly the same. The only thing now is you just go with more data, and you go with waterfall charts and all this stuff that I don't actually have a single clue about anymore. Thankfully, we've got an amazing sales team who are much better at kind of like the negotiation game than I am, and it kind of works in that life cycle of a brand. When you're beginning, I would go to those meetings and be like, hi, I'm Jim, I found Amazing Iced Coffee in Oz, and now I want to sell it here, and it's really, really exciting. And they go, cool, let's give this guy a listing, let's put it in a couple of 100 stores and see how it goes. And then as you get older, they're like, okay, the startup story, let's park that. Let's get down to the nitty gritty. Let's really talk about data. Let's talk about category analysis. Let's talk about all these other different things, which some people are completely trained in doing. I'm not trained in any of that kind of stuff.
And that takes on to an interesting topic, which is the role of the founder and how it changes in time.
Yeah.
And you've just alluded to that a little bit. So have you found that change? Because some people find it exceptionally difficult to adapt to, can't cope with it. So they sort of stop or give up. Have you found that change? And what have you enjoyed about it, and what have you not enjoyed?
There has been a massive change, particularly in the last 12 months. You're basically, for the first 6 to 7 years, I was just turbo on everything. So I ran all of the social media, I did loads of talks, I did loads of trying to manage people, hiring, firing, all of these kind of things, all of which I'm actually not any good at all. But you have to do it because there's no one else to do it at the time, and you've got to learn all these things. But fortunately, last year we took on our managing director, who's this dude called Rick, and he needs us just as much as we need him. So he moved down to Lilliput in Poole from Hertfordshire, where he was commuting into London every day and not enjoying it. And he said, look, I need to find a job that's in this area within Poole that I can actually really enjoy. So he found us, and he started working with us, and he cycles to work every single day along the seafront. So for him, that's like a massive tick compared to doing 2 hours each way going into London. And since he's come on board, I kind of had a big meltdown at the beginning of last year, and I just had to basically just take some time out, because I think like everything just caught up on me. So I had about 3 or 4 months out, and I just didn't drink any coffee, I didn't drink any beer, I did loads of yoga, I did loads of running, and I just felt like a much better person for doing so. And I think it was a case of, right, someone's come along to step up to the plate to go, do you know what, I can actually take over this part of your role. And I was like, okay, well, I was managing director, but I was actually really crap at it. You're clearly skilled at this, so you take the keys, I'm going to go and chill out for a little bit, and then I'm going to come back gradually and kind of see how it goes. And I didn't regret or didn't feel like I was out of control. And I know a lot of like business founders and stuff, they want to have complete control of stuff, but if someone is better than me at doing something, then by all means take it, because you're clearly better at it than I am, and we're only going to get a better result out of it in the long run, and it means I don't have to do it anymore.
So what's your day job then now?
It's not as many hours as it was or as it used to be. I guess if I ironed it out over the course of 10 years, I'd probably do a standard 9 to 5, because at the beginning it was stupid and now it's a little bit more relaxed. But predominantly it's kind of just making sure that we can help with the brand direction, because that's always been my side of the company. And then we've always got core meetings going on between just the core director team that we've got, and then you've got your board meetings, and then, for example, we did a new taste testing today on a can that we're going to be launching, this extra shot flat white, which is going to be insane, and we need to be involved in that. So there's not actual proper day-to-day bums on seats, me clicking away going through a spreadsheet. That doesn't exist anymore, which is amazing, and it's much more about helping the others with troubleshooting or coming and doing something like this or whatever it is. So there's a lot more freedom in the role, which is really nice.
So you sort of transitioned from being in the business to working on the business, if that makes sense. So thinking bigger.
Yeah, and that's such a good way of putting it. It's kind of like I spent so much time kind of swimming underwater, thinking you're going in the right direction, then you pop up and you're like, shit, I'm meant to be going over there, and I've actually just been going over there because I've just got all this work to do. Now you can actually see where you're going and just make sure everyone's following that path, and that's a really nice thing.
And so from day one, when you thought actually this is going to work, and it's now clearly working, how far does your ambition go in terms of where do you want to take Jimmy's in the next 12 months, 3 years?
There's kind of there's quite a few aspects on this. I see this as, try and put this in this way. I lived in Dubai for 18 years, and I'm now doing my 19th year in the UK, and I kind of feel like I've got 2 kids. I've got Soph, who's my awesome wife, out the back, and I'm like, could I just do another 18 years in another country and just turn this into my 3rd kind of life chapter? Yes, I could, but I can't leave the company because I do love it. It's amazing. But in the same breath, also, I want to try and look after the company, and we've been thinking about it for a long time, and I think in the next 2 to 3 years, we want to be able to partner with either a private equity firm that can inject some cash in it so we can do some really, really fun stuff, to then grow, to then be able to sell to someone like a trade partner who can actually do what we've always set out to do. And our mission statement or our objective for the company has never changed. It's always been, we want to make awesome ready-to-drink iced coffee that you can fit into an amazing fridge in the UK and beyond. And if we can do that with accelerated growth through other partners, then we're going to explore that, because it would just be amazing. I toyed with the idea for such a long time of handing down the business to generation after generation, and I can't think of anything worse to put that on my son or daughter's head. But like, here you go, you can run this company. Good luck, because you're dealing with retail, and retail is such a motherfucker. Sorry. I mean, it can be amazing. It is amazing at times, but there are definitely other things when you've been through the mill. Actually, what do I not want? I don't want to deal with retail again in my next chapter of life. And life's really, really short. And I think in a couple of years it'd be kind of nice to be able to make a proper break, to be able to go and do something new and something exciting. I've got this daydream in my head that I'm lying on my deathbed and someone goes, "Hey Jim, what's your biggest regret?" And I'll go, "I didn't take my kids around the world in our van for a year." And if I don't do that, I'm just going to really kick myself. And that's one of the things that I really, really want to do.
I think it'd be tough handing it down, because you'd have to have a lot of kids called Jimmy, wouldn't you?
That's a good point. I don't think Kip's going to be able to grow a good beard either. He's just a bit waxy, isn't he?
So there are a couple of things that I specifically want to talk about, which is the first one that you've fairly recently, gone through a bit of a rebrand. Mm-hmm. So can we talk about what drove that, and what got you to the point in the business where you thought, actually the brand that we had isn't working, or needs freshening up, or what was the decision-making process that you went to, and why was it done at that point?
So this was when Rick, our new MD, came in. He actually came in just to consult us on a Tesco thing that we had going on, and he worked with us for, let's say, 3 or 4 days in this chunk of time. But while he was there, he was kind of questioning, your pack, but does it actually tell you everything that the consumer needs to know in a heartbeat? Because people's decision-making processes in buying soft drinks or on-the-go products is really, really short, their time span. So is it giving them all the right information? And we actually really considered and thought, do you know what, it's not. And so the brand actually is still very, very much the same in terms of the logo device and all these other kind of things. It's actually just changing the skin of the rest of the carton, and we just thought, well, we've just been fundamentally white with a different colour depending on which product variant it is. But why don't we just, rather than just changing the colour, why don't we just give it a whole new skin and give it this kind of vibrant look, so when people walk by they go, oh, that looks a little bit more eye-catching than just a straight-up white carton. So that's kind of what drove that, which was just an outsider questioning it in a very kind of business-led manner. We got this. We can't tell whether it's actually helped or not. Right. We have this thing in the office called TMV, which is too many variables, and it's kind of like when you take an advert out in a newspaper. You don't know whether there's a sales spike because of that. The only thing that we know is when the sun shines and it's hot, we sell iced coffee. That's simple fact. If we did 1,000 billboards and we changed all of our design and we got a spike, we would probably base it on the weather over anything else.
Okay, that's interesting. Because it did feel to me like although it wasn't a rebrand in the logo, but because of that skin refresh, it made such a drastic difference to the way that the cartons looked in the fridge or in the presentation display or anything. It just felt like a real freshening up of the whole thing, really. I'm
really glad you said that, because no one's actually really come forward and gone, do you know what? It's made me buy it, or it stood out a whole load more, or anything like that. So it's really good to hear that that's kind of happening. And it's quite nice now that we've got a system in place where seasonality, with seasons, we can actually change the skin. So, for example, the background used to just have a whole load of people on lilos and ringos and stuff floating about in the sea. And then as soon as winter hits, we actually put a mountain scene on there with like penguins snowboarding and all these other kind of things with a mountain range and bits and pieces. And that kind of seems to work as well. So if we can keep the logo device the same but keep switching the skin around, then that's quite a nice kind of freedom tactic you've got in design.
Okay, cool. So I want to talk next a bit about culture and growing teams and some of the challenges and the things that Jimmy's had there. But as we've been talking a little bit about brand, are there any brand related questions that anybody has at all?
It took about 5 months. Maybe a little bit less than that, maybe 4 months. Actually worked with a friend of mine to create the beginnings of the logo device. And that was, I just basically had a drawing, which I still have, wrapped around an old carton of what I wanted it to look like. And that got turned into a design. And then we went to a really good friend of mine who's got an agency in London called Interrobang. And they're more of an official, proper agency that actually know how to translate that into a favicon or something to do your website, or how you split your logo device across stretch screens or mobile and all that kind of stuff. So much more detailed. And that took about 4 months. You always have to look around and keep your eyes open to see what other people are doing. And they did an amazing job of doing that. As did Starbucks when people are ordering their coffee, rather than it being a flat white, which 10 other people have ordered. It's actually John's flat white or something. So that's another really good idea. We'll come up with something one day that people go, holy shit, that was a really good idea too. It's definitely not good to copy, but it is always great to come up with these things. And when you're living in that industry, you're living and breathing so many other companies, and it's so refreshing to see other startups doing really, really interesting things. Particularly there's the carbonated water space without sugar, cans basically with like infused fruit flavors with no sugar. So it's not the most. It's tasty, but it's just like a little hint of flavour. And there's like 3 or 4 different brands that are fighting for that space at the moment. And I love all of them because they all have totally different personalities, but they're all delivering the same message of refreshment without the sugar. Some are kind of very adult, some are very kind of roguey. And it's lovely to kind of see that space. And you can pinch little elements of that to put into your own thing. But yeah, eyes wide open on that, 100%.
So the next element I want to talk about, which generally appeals to a lot of people in a growing company, is about people, growth, culture, etc. So when you started, it was just you and your sister. Is that right?
That's right.
And who or what role was your first hire?
That was Steve, who's AutoSum. He's our finance guy, and he's an old dinosaur that says no all the time, and that's what you need in a finance guy. And he was really good mates with my sister when she owned her coffee shop. He would come in every day and have a bacon, lettuce and onion sandwich. They'd chat shit. He would complain about his company. Suze would complain about her coffee shop. They got into motorbiking, and they just became really, really good mates. So when we started Jimmy's up, we realised that he had a good finance head on him, and we were like, dude, can you help us out with a few bits? So he helped us out with a few things, and then he said, you know what, I really want to sell my company. So can I jump into your company? We kind of invited him on board, and that's kind of how it started. And then from then, he was the first person to need a sidekick, which was a dude called Luke. And he came in as a administrational kind of sponge. He was 22 when he joined us, and now he's our operations director, and he's 26, 27, and he's just one of the coolest guys on the planet. He's a hero.
And how's it grown since then? How have you determined what roles to fill and what roles not to fill and what roles wait? Have you sort of determined that? Has it been down to what you like doing, what you don't like doing, what you're good at, what you're bad at?
Yeah, it definitely comes down to it's the other way around. It's like what you're good at and what you're bad at first, as opposed to I don't like doing that. Chances are, if you don't like doing something, you're not going to be very good at it either. We were really slow in hiring. So, for example, when you speak to startups, they're like, oh yeah, we're working with a social media agency, or I've got to hire a social media person. It's like, you don't have to do that at all. In fact, they're one of the last people you can hire, because you can run an Instagram account, you can run a Twitter account very, very easily, and it doesn't take up much time. So we basically, you just take a look on the outside of your business and go, right, you've got an MD, or you've got your two co-founders. One looks after the operational side, one does the brand side and the selling side, so that's me and my sister. Then you've got your finance guy. Finance guy's like, right, actually, I really, really need an assistant. And I'm like, well, I need an assistant. And they're like, well, what for? And you're like, oh, I don't really know yet. Well, tough, I'm going to have this assistant. And then you're like, right, who's the next person in this triangle? Well, we actually need a salesperson. Okay, well, let's get the salesperson in because they can deliver X. And then you start getting a little bit more calculated as to how much someone becomes worth within a company. And you know that if you're going to be paying them 30 grand, 50 grand, 100 grand, you know that they've got to get that back into the company somehow, some way. So that's kind of how it works out.
And so you're 22 people? 22 was it?
Yeah, 22.
Yeah, okay. So did you sit down and define culture? Did you sit down and think, right, these are our values that Jimmy's Iced Coffee is going to have, and everybody who employs is going to be like this? So was that a conscious decision? Was it metamorphic? How did that work?
That's I think those kind of things where people sit down and they define their culture, that's when you get to corporate stages where you get someone like I've seen it at places like Diageo, and they suddenly turn around and they go, Christ, we're the most boring company in the world. Let's get cool. Pool table. I know we've got a pool table here. But they suddenly go, let's get young and fresh and funky and do cool stuff, because they realise they've just got really, really old and boring, and it's like partying with your uncle, and you're just like, uncle, you're an idiot. I want to go and properly have fun. With our stuff, we started with Jimmy's Iced Coffee, and Keep Your Chin Up was at the very beginning of our thing. It's our strapline, it's our mantra, it's everything about what we do. So that has to carry through in the food we eat, how people come to work, what they're allowed to do, and how we express ourselves to all of our customers as well. So we can't be like, keep your chin up, don't take any photographs of our office because it's actually really boring and we whip people and stuff. It's got to be completely transparent, and that just came completely naturally because that's what we wanted to do.
Where did the keep your chin up come from?
It just literally came into my brain. I remember it so randomly. I'm driving up Nugent Road, which is right near where our house is, driving on my way to my friend's house to get our first design done, and I just thought, okay, Audi have Vorsprung der Technik. I have no idea what it means, but that's their strapline. BMW have the ultimate driving machine. Apple have Think Different. All these companies have their strapline. I was like, well, what's Jimmy? And it just literally just came into my head as like, and just Keep Your Chin Up came up, and I just thought that just sounds quintessentially British. It's got a bit of a fun connotation to it, and I don't know, it just felt completely right. And what we never expected was like the keep your chin up thing is just like keep your chin up, man. Everything's cool, so just don't worry about it. And I never forget getting an email from this girl who she just had to go and put her dog down, and she obviously had this dog for like 12 years or something, and she stood in the BP and she's basically stood in the queue just crying because she's just had the dog put down, and she just turned to her side, and then there's what's it called? A speed rail or some kind of like quick service fridge which is right by the till. There's a Jimmy's there, and it said keep your chin up at the bottom, and she just lost it. And she bought the carton and she drank it, and she came back and she wrote us an email and basically just sobbing about her dog, but the fact that we just made her day by the fact that we'd had this on the bottom of our carton. And little things like that are really nice, because we didn't set out to go and cheer up a lady whose dog's just died, but you know that it's kind of like an overflow thing that's worked really, really well.
Yeah. And so how do you grow a team to 22 to get everybody going along the same lines? I mean, you must have, by mistake, presumably, you must have employed a miserable sod who all of a sudden came across really well at interview, and then after a few weeks, you suddenly thought, oh, he's a bit dull, or he doesn't really fit.
Yeah, well, that's my fault for trying to be, or not trying to be, but having to act as MD. Hiring, I'd hire someone and go, hey man, do you like getting drunk? And they go, yeah, I'd love a few beers. Great, you got the job. That would be my thing, which is really bad, because someone told me the other day, like, hire slow and fire fast. Don't do it the other way around. And I was totally the opposite. Hire like immediately and then spend about 8 weeks going, shit, I don't know how to fire this guy. This is going to be really, really bad. So our new MD is very, very good at hiring people. And he goes through like interview after interview, and he's like, right, Rick, how are you getting on with certain person? He's like, well, they're on interview number 5, and what I'd like you to do is if you could go and have a beer with them to work out that kind of side. Dude, do we really? And he's like, yes, we need to do this, because in order to get the right person, we need to interview this kind of many times. And there's 2 things. One is set them tasks. So like, this is the job. Can you actually do the job? I'm going to set you some tasks to make you prove to me that you can do the job. And then also there's the other side, which is, are they a cultural fit? Are they going to come in and actually get along with everyone else? So at 8 o'clock in the morning, we have a big breakfast table where everyone can basically just cook scrambled eggs for everyone and hang out and chat. And if there's one person who just sits there and doesn't do anything and they sit on their phone all day, they're not really they shouldn't really be part of our thing, because that's not what we're about. We are a bit of a family, and that's really nice. So it's getting that balance to make it work perfectly. And I think one of the things that we can do to help that is, well, there's a number of things. One is everyone having breakfast around the table together, because you can all talk, you can all unload personal stuff, you can talk about work stuff, and it means you're not going to spend the day kind of going to people's desks individually saying, oh, what did you get up to on the weekend? Everyone's there in the morning. And then every Friday we'll have a Triple M, which is actually a Monday morning meeting, but we have it on a Friday. And that's an hour long of everyone going around the table just saying exactly what's happened that week, but they're only given a couple of minutes to do so, and that's a nice big G up. And there's 101 other things to get the whole crowd moving and just believing and being part of what we're doing.
So are you at the point yet where you're having to think about employing people in other areas? So other countries or other locations, or do you feel that you can manage everything from Christchurch?
And we've got 2 people who work remotely. One girl called Charlie, who works on our sales team. She lives up in London. And it's helpful that she's there, because a lot of the HQs are around there for her to go and meet. Now that we've just gone into Ireland, she's gone to go and interview someone who can actually go and do loads of sampling work around Ireland. So going into a boot store, for example, setting up a little table where they can sample product from. So that's a new, fresh person who isn't going to be in the office. Ideally, anyone who's going to be office-based, it's nice to have them in the office, because that's the engine room, and it's nice to be part of that whole thing. But unfortunately, some people they do work remotely, but we try and get them into the office as much as they can, so they can just get a taster of, everyone and what we're up to and things like that. Because it can be quite a lonely world if you're out there on your own. So it's good to be able to just drop back in once in a while.
And so how do things like making the scrambled egg and doing the 3am, but the Friday morning we used to have the same thing. How does that start to translate? Have you thought about how that's going to start to work if you get more remotes, or if you get people in a warehouse in Newcastle and stuff? Because that's when the challenges come. It's when you start to have to build that culture to more than the people that you can immediately touch every day, isn't it?
Yeah, so you build a framework around it. So Charlie, for example, the girl who works in London, we make sure she comes down once a month for 2 or 3 days. so that she can get her kind of Jimmy's fix by being down here. And then you'll have all of your external stuff like Christmas parties and summer do's and bits that they're invited to. And thankfully for tech, you don't have to send someone a fax these days. You can actually just see them face to face on FaceTime for 5 minutes just to say, hey man, what's going on? How are you doing? And you can kind of still feel really connected through all of that availability on tech.
And so when did you stop doing when did you stop doing the hiring and hand it over to your MD?
That was pretty much when he came on board at the beginning of the year. I mean, it wouldn't just be me. There'd be a couple of us in the team interviewing. And since he's been on board, I think we've had another 8 people join, and it's been so nice to see that, because all I've wanted, not that I've only wanted to hire people, because there's no point hiring people if you don't need to, but I really want to try and get as many people into the company to enjoy what we do, but also to help build the brand out. And like I was talking about earlier, you've got that thing called too many variables and sunshine and all that kind of stuff. We've got a dude in our office called Wheeler, and he's our local compliance guy. So he gets up, he comes into work, he eats breakfast, he gets into a Jimmy's van, and then he buggers off to some town in the south, southwest, southeast, and he will go and drop into every single store, like a Tesco, Waitrose, Sainsbury's, BP, Morrison's or whatever, and just make sure that we're on the shelf. He'll high-five the manager, he'll try and get us better shelf space, better visibility, all these kind of things. And when he comes back to a Friday morning meeting, he'll go, okay, so my rate of sale, which is what I control in all of these stores, is at 20 units per store per week, versus national, which is sitting at 10 units per store per week. So you're like, shit, you've just doubled sales just by going in and being a complete dude, high-fiving the manager and making sure we've got great visibility. And so then you're kind of like, right, so this is, we actually need Wheeler times 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You've got London, which is so big that you could actually have North, East, South, West, get 4 of those guys in there. Then actually you get Steph, our marketing girl, she'll run some data on how well we sell in like our top 5 best-selling Tesco stores. And one of them is a university in Swansea. There's a Tesco Express in University in Swansea, that's our best selling store, and I wouldn't have a clue that's true. So why aren't we infiltrating a little bit more work into Swansea? Our next best selling store is in Leeds. I didn't know that either. So why aren't we getting a dude in Leeds to go and flood that area? So it's a case of this thing called fish where the fish are fishing. Don't fish where there aren't any fish. You got to fish where the fish are, and that's exactly what we're trying to do. And if we've got a proven track record with this guy Wheeler, let's just get a ton more out there, because it makes such a difference. I went off on one there, I'm really sorry.
No, it's fine. It's interesting, because I think one of the points there is that at some point in time, so you've organically grown your business, bootstrapped it, relied on cash that you generated. But then at that point in that sort of business, it becomes the stage where you as an MD and seeing on the company, you want to go and hire another 40 people, or whatever that number is. But that entails a big cash outlay, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. And that's where the funding starts to come in. So do you feel yourself being dragged to that PE mode, to that VC world, whatever it is, quicker than you perhaps like, or do you feel compelled to go that way just to give you the ability to scale?
I think that we wouldn't be able to necessarily hire like 50 people tomorrow, because we haven't got the manpower to manage those 50 people. So that the people thing is always going to be an organic thing. Our biggest challenge at the moment with regards to someone like PE is being able to manufacture ourselves. So with the birth of the microbrewery, for example, there are massive companies out there that's supplying microbrewing kits to microbreweries. So I don't know if has anyone had 8 Arch beer here?
Yeah, I've had.
Okay, it's insane. It's run by this dude called Steve. It's out in Wimborne. He's got a canning machine. And when I see a can, I think, okay, this is made in some German factory where they produce 45 billion cans a minute. But that's not the case these days, because there's such a demand for home brewing that people are actually making tiny canning machines for the tiny guy. And we're thinking, well, why aren't we just making canned iced coffee ourselves? Why are we getting someone else to make it? And also, we've got a pledge to be plastic free by 2020, and our cartons at the moment have a plastic lid, and we're not so cool with that. And we'd much rather try and get into cans. It's infinitely recyclable. It's one ingredient. So when we go to a private equity firm, we're kind of like, well, actually, we used to outsource, but now we want some money so that we can actually buy a factory, buy some beard nets, and buy a canning machine so that we can produce, not just 5 million cans a year. We actually estimate with this kit, we want to be doing 20 million cans a year in the next 2 to 3 years. So can you invest in that kind of infrastructure? And that's where it gets really exciting for us, and for me in particular, because I've done the marketing stuff, that's tick, and there's nothing surprising anymore in marketing or in anything in that kind of realm. Finance just bores the crap out of me. So the new exciting thing for me would be getting something like this. And the whole, you can make great content out of actually having your own machinery and actually also becoming vertically integrated, which is something I learned the other day, where you actually do the whole thing yourself. Sounds really, really exciting to us. So we can save margin, we can be on quality control, we can test loads of stuff. And I think that's going to be our next big step to see if we can get that under our belt.
And do you ever see a world of Jimmy's iced other stuff? Like tea? Maybe a bit radical, I know, but...
Tea's pretty cool. Actually, Twinings do these like cold infused tea bags. I don't know, has anyone ever tried them? They're really rad. I've got a, what's it called? A soda stream at the office.
Yeah.
I'm a sparkling water addict. And so you're just making up sparkling water all day. And then you add one of those to it, and it's really nice. So I do like iced tea. But I don't think... I just don't see it as exciting as... Like, iced coffee is just... There's something about it that just makes me smile, and I find it really, really exciting. We could do an iced cream, but I just don't like the idea of just being stuck in a freezer. It sounds weird, because Ben & Jerry's have obviously done really well, but I'm not so sure. I think there's enough momentum and enough growth within the iced coffee market where we can just do more iced coffees as opposed to Jimmy's something else.
So have you noticed... I mean, you must know the competition changing since you started. I mean, how many iced coffees are there around now that weren't around when you started?
So there's a couple of new big guys that have joined the scene, but there's also heaps more much smaller guys that have joined the scene. And that's predominantly on a cold brew channel. The smaller guys are predominantly doing cold brew, but then the big guys are just coming in and just going caramel latte, and they're sitting there doing their thing. And some stick around for a little bit, and some just die off. And it's funny when you talk to investors, they're like, "Oh, but what happens if, Coke bring out an iced coffee?" And I said, "Well, why aren't Starbucks in M&S and we are?" That's a really, really big question, and they can't answer it. It's not, you can't have buying power to get into these places anymore, like they used to just do a little backhand, like I'll put us on the shelf. That's like illegal these days. So you just have to keep fighting your fight in that respect. But it's been interesting seeing these new players come in, and we've knocked out a couple of players, which has been amazing. But we're always still chasing these two big guys, and one of them will knock out, and the other one I don't think he'll ever die, but we'll see.
You can have a good go then.
Yeah,
absolutely. So Jimmy's Car Club. Talk to us a little bit about that. So that seems a nice little side extension. Sort of supports the brand quite nicely.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
So it's actually, sorry to change it here, but it's called the Ride Club.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
So, no, it's fine. It started, particularly myself and Steve, our finance guy, we really like classic cars. And I don't mean really, everyone loves a really expensive classic car, but I've got a old Mercedes 200T. It's a W123 estate. It's just a really old, ragged estate car, but I love it, and it's 1981. And then we've got the Ford F100 pickup, which is a 1973 American thing, which we drove back from Sweden. Steve's got a couple of old Mercedes, and we just really like that kind of thing. And we feel that this sounds cheesy, I don't know, but we feel like we're on a business journey, and we like the idea that we're on a business road trip. And what better road trip to do than in a classic, or something that makes you feel good. And it doesn't necessarily then have to be a car, it can be anything else. So our newsletter is now not called Jimmy's Newsletter, it's actually Join Our Ride Club. And when you join, you'll get a pin badge, you'll get a handwritten note in the post, you'll get invited to, I hate the word exclusive, you'll just get invited to events before anyone else does. So we hosted a rally a couple of years ago. And we're now just toying with the idea of how kind of successful it's been. And we don't know whether we will still keep like the newsletter thing as the Ride Club, but the rest of it we don't know whether we're going to keep it going. We're just we'll just see how it goes, really. Yeah. But it's been fun. It has been really fun.
Yeah, cool. I've been to one or two of those things. Right. Any questions?
Well, thanks for starters. Secondly, I don't have anything to compare it to because I've never set up another company that doesn't have my name on it or any of my kind of thing behind it. So I definitely think it has had an input because it's my tone of voice, which is generally kind of happy and enthusiastic, and people like that kind of thing. We're in a day and age where people like to see behind a brand. They want to know how something started. Because if you're not just buying something that you want to drink, you actually want to drink something that you believe in, and you kind of feel like you're part of that person's journey. So whether it's my face or someone else's face, but if they're putting their life on the line and they're putting their name on something, then they really mean what they're doing. So I do think it's had a really important thing as part of our growth. I just think in the future we want to try and, for example, my face used to be on the side of the carton, and we've taken that off. And you have investors, when you meet these people all the time, and they'll say, what happens if you die tomorrow? And you're like, well, it'll still continue because it's kind of like not a legacy thing, but the tone of voice isn't going to change. We're still going to do exactly the same thing. We're still going to have heaps of fun. It's just that guy's dead. A bit morbid, but yeah, that's kind of the...
Sales might spike.
Yeah, you never know. It might be hot that weekend. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it.
Question. No, you wouldn't do it.
If I was going to start all over again, I'd probably learn to say no a lot faster than I have done. I find that I say yes to lots of things that I don't mean to say yes to, and you kind of then once you said yes to something, you end up having to do 15 or 20 things until that thing is done. And everything that you do in those things, you don't actually want to be doing in the first place, and you're wasting time. So it's easier just to go no, and then you're free of that really crap idea that you're going to say yes to. And then I'd also be a little bit more calculated in my thinking. We were very much just go, and that's part of the success, but part of the potential slip-ups that we've had. So maybe just thinking about something for a little bit longer. And we have this saying in the office called Take 24, which is sleeping on something. Take 24 hours to make a decision. We'd before be like, yep, let's do it, let's just go. Now we're like, right, sleep on it, come back, we'll regroup tomorrow, same time, and we'll make a decision. And half the time, it'll be, I'm really glad I slept on that because I think that's the worst idea ever.
We won't record this bit.
It depends on your buyer. You could have the notorious, horrible supermarket in the world, but you might have the coolest buyer in the entire world in that role at the particular time. It depends on what side of the bed they got out of, with who, and all these other things. And sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. I've got a buyer at Spinneys, which is our supermarket out in the United Arab Emirates. And we just talk about, he's moved over from Scotland and he's living in Dubai. He knows that I was there for 18 years. We spend half an hour talking about off-roading in the desert before we actually talk about our sales. And he's just like, oh yeah, if you just do this, that and the other, then we'll probably be able to get the rate of sale up and it'll be great. And we'll chat soon. And yeah, I'll be over in the UK, so let's have a barbecue in the summer. And you're like, geez, I wish all of my buyers were like that. Other buyers don't pick up the phone. Other buyers give you the steely negotiating look. And you're like, why are you looking at me like that? I'm just selling you iced coffee here. I'm not trying to work on the hydrogen, whatever accelerator it is. So yeah, it all depends, but it's all down to the buyer. I'm actually really shit at reading. I've got the attention span of a gnat.
Just like Donald Trump.
Yes, but uglier.
No.
I'm actually not really all that... I mean, I can read, but we've got 2 kids, and by the time they've gone to bed, just trying to actually open a page is actually quite hard. I think fundamentally trying to pick someone that you can get advice from is really useful. So we've had a few mentors, and it's just a case of picking up the phone going, dude, I love the way you do business. I love what your thing is about. Can I take you for lunch? And could you potentially just, I'd buy you lunch every 3 months just to pick your brains on stuff. And that's where I get most of our guidance from. The rest now that we've got this kind of very calculated team in place, so Steph, our marketing lady, who is looking at, for example, where we sell best, she will then go and buy outdoor media space to support those areas to encourage future sales. And if we're going to go to an event, it's like, well, what's going to be the return on the investment of that event? I'd be like, let's go to Festival so we can get drunk. And she's like, well, Festival, this is the demographic. Perhaps we should maybe look at another festival which has got a slightly more, a different demographic that's got a higher spending power, and they all tend to shop in Waitrose as opposed to Asda. And as we're shopped in Waitrose and we need to get a rate of sale up in there, that's the reason why we're going to go and do it. And I go, okay, that's fine. Yeah. So yeah, it is exactly that. We're very much, our eyes are really open to everything at the moment. So our things are, for example, we've just changed our caps for our iced coffee. I don't know if you've seen, but it's now made from sugarcane instead of from fossil fuels. So you're still making plastic, but the way you're making it is different. So that's one of the things that we're doing. 1% of our profits go to charitable causes. So we're meeting Service Against Sewage next month. We work with Wave Project, which is down here. I don't know if anyone's seen it, but it's insane. And I guess it's just applying that mentality as you grow. You've got more money in the pot to put to better use. And we're also looking at potentially creating the KYCU, like Keep Your Chin Up Foundation, in which you can get great tax kicks from to then put more money into more pots. So it's constantly re-evaluating. So myself and Rick, we sat down in Poole a few weeks ago just to discuss where's the company going and what do we want the company to do, not just on a sales point of view, but we want to become one of the most awesome employers in the country. Okay, that's a big tick. What do we want to do on a CSR focus? Okay, we want to make sure that we can look after young kids, and we want to inspire young kids to go into business, because without the young kids, if they're not guided right, then we're stuffed. So it's just constantly re-evaluating that. Yeah, we do that a lot. We partner. Well, typically it'll be it can be anything from like a social media post where you can win Jimmy's and some sun cream because it's going to be hot next week. That's one form of partnership. You could partner on an event that you wanted to do, for example. So we might partner with Black Cow Vodka and Conquer Cold Brew Coffee Liqueur to set up a bar in Bournemouth to make White Russians. So that's a 3-way split. There are 100 different versions of partnership. We haven't done anything really big, but we do quite a lot of kind of small ones. It's been interesting. We did a video with Microsoft the other day, maybe like 3 or 4 years ago actually, to promote their Surface 3 tablet kind of thing. They came to us and said, look, we want to make a video about you. We'll put them onto our channels. We're going to get The Guardian to do a piece on it. And you're like, well, this kind of makes sense because you big us up in the best way possible, and we get a few free tablets out of it, and that's great.
Did you see a spike?
We were too small to even look at spikes back in the day, but there's a lot of the time you just know on instinct whether it's going to be whether it's worthwhile doing or not. Yeah. Depends on how good you are at cooking. You got a deal. God, to be honest, I just don't know. It's just one of those things where it's like kind of when things just come together and they just seem to work. It wasn't like we were treading on eggshells or trying to act in different ways because we now work together. It's just, it either works or it doesn't, and it just worked. It wasn't like sitting down going, right, after work, we don't talk about work, we only talk about fun stuff, because it just doesn't work like that. It's one of these things that just, you suddenly just end up, someone becomes your business partner and you just go, and that was that. And that's exactly what it is. I'd love to be able to go into the science behind it, but I literally can't. Came back, looked at, went into Sainsbury's, desperate for an iced coffee that I had, like the same one I had in Oz. Realised there was Starbucks, Emmy, and a few other things that I just didn't like because their branding and packaging ingredients were all shit. I then thought, in true Dragon's Den style, that there was a gap in the market for an amazing or awesome ready-to-drink iced coffee. So I started working. I got hold of my sister who was running this cafe at the time. And I said, look, your cafe isn't doing very well. You know a little bit about coffee. Let's go into business together selling awesome ready-to-drink iced coffee. We borrowed some money off mum and dad. They got us on the ladder. We searched the internet as far as we could to find people who could help us make the product. We found someone who could make the product for us in Shepton Mallet in Somerset. We did a factory trial. We sampled all that. We gave all those little samples out to people, including buyers of Whole Foods and other places. They all agreed to list it, and then it kind of just started from there. Sounds really simple. It is, it just takes a long time.
Anybody else? Other stories? Any questions? No. So I suppose my final question, in terms of just a couple of minutes we've got left, is just a quick show of hands. How many people have or are interested in food-related businesses? I know a few people. All right, just the one or two. Okay. So what advice would you give to these guys? I mean, obviously the startup generally, but specifically let's talk about food first and then talk about, or do startups and food in whichever way you feel.
It's all basic. Yeah, it's basically just, it's the hardest thing in the entire world. Actually, it's not as hard as having kids. Having kids is really hard. But they are amazing. They are amazing. But business is it's impossible sometimes. And I think the word, I mean, I can't stand the word entrepreneur. I think it's just so glammed up. And when someone thinks of entrepreneur, they just think of this rich guy who gets up at 5 a.m. and goes to the gym and then just wears this beautiful suit and doesn't actually do fucking work at all. It's like, actually, no, it's you're basically a slave to yourself for many years before anything actually happens. So entrepreneurs can just do one. It's actually just working your nuts off in ways that you never ever thought you'd ever do. So you just got to be prepared for that. And also you've got to have that little bit of madness to know that actually for the next, if someone said, hey Jim, when we first started out, this is what your life's going to be like for the next 2 years, an hour-long documentary of what I was going to be doing, I'd probably just go, do you know what, forget it, I'm cool, I'm actually going to just chill, this will be okay. So it's just being prepared for that like onslaught of craziness. Particularly in food and drink, it's just getting harder and harder and harder. So it's actually harder to now find manufacturers to make your stuff because they're getting 300 emails a day. So they're putting their barriers up and they're getting more expensive, and they're saying, well, if you want to do a production run with us, instead of saying, yeah, we can do you 5,000 of your granola bars, you actually have to do 100,000. So immediately you've turned a customer away, and it's been really problematic for that startup. It's the same with retailers. Trying to get into retail is really hard. But what's interesting is the space of DTC or direct to consumer now, where you can actually just buy directly online from people, specifically with subscription models where you pay and you just know it's going to come each week, each month. And that's a great thing because you're then inevitably in charge of your own shelf space. When someone like Tesco controls 46% of your business, it's squeaky bum syndrome every night because they could just pick up the phone and go, do you know what, it's been fun, but see you later. But to be able to sell online is a really, really amazing thing. Some people can do it, some people can't. But if you can, I would explore it to the hilt.
So do you ever see Jim is doing something like that, delivering coffee by subscription? Or is that just a stupid idea?
No, we have quite a few people buying cases off us because they realise it's actually just cheaper. And when they just drink our stuff regularly, they want it every single day, then they'll just keep buying cases off us, which is great. But we exist in a world where you're driving, you pull up to a petrol station, I really fancy a nice coffee. There it is, it's ice cold, bang, it's an impulse purchase, which you weren't really maybe expecting to get. And you have to be a lot more organised in the online space in order to be like, right, I've got my iced coffees, I need to put 6 in the fridge, the other 6 are in the spare room or whatever. So ours doesn't necessarily fit in that realm.
Okay. And what about any other advice for people thinking about starting up, apart from don't do it?
No, definitely do it because it is fun. There are 1,001 things, but yeah, I think what you were saying earlier about like what advice or like what would you, yeah. But yeah, there are just 1,001 things, and it's a case of actually just taking things a little bit slower, not rushing into things too much, learning to say no, and actually knowing exactly what it is that you want to do. It's quite interesting seeing people who start stuff up and they want to make 20 products straight away. Just start with one product. There's a really cool guy who's got a jeans company called Hyatt Denim. I don't know if anyone knows of that dude, David Hyatt. Their strapline for their jeans company is just do one thing and one thing well, and they just make amazing jeans, and they just do short runs. they're not making millions and millions of pounds, but that's not what he wants to do. And it's kind of really important to set out to know exactly what you want to do. Our thing was to make ready-to-drink iced coffee. It wasn't to be, and we're not multi-millionaires. It's not a case of like we just want to get rich. It's a case of actually, do you know what makes me rich is actually seeing someone pick up a Jimmy's and drink it. I saw a guy doing it at Folkestone, Tesco the other day. He came out with a mocha and drank it, closed his eyes, and he drank the whole thing. And that for me was like, fuck me, I'm loaded. This is amazing. This is the coolest thing I've ever seen. So that kind of stuff is really cool. And then just knowing when you're kind of when you're ready to pass batons on. So and that could be a big thing or a small thing. Like letting go of social media for me to someone was actually kind of a nice release because I was just on it all day. But then to pass it on was like, oh, great, like a pat on the back. I've done my job for that, and you can pass it on. Just know when to let go. I mean, I could give 1,000 examples, but that'll be it for now.
Excellent, thank you. So I think we're about time. I'd just like to thank you, sir, for coming along. It's been really great fun.
It's really cool.
If we just give Jimmy a round of applause, and we'll be around for beers and drinks.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Matt. Awesome. Yeah, really cool. Really cool. Thank you.